And here we are, finally live. We're having a little technical issues that we're trying to work out. Welcome to the podcast, Talking Politics with David Blackmon, Larry Schweikart, and Stu Turley. Larry is America's history teacher, best-selling author of a series of books that I want to give Larry, before we get into the discussion today, a chance to tell everyone where they can find your books, Larry.
Well, of course, you can get everything on Amazon if you can spell my name correctly. But also you can get everything at the Wild World of History or the Wild World of Politics. History is for those who are engaged in history teaching, such as homeschoolers or even public school teachers who just want more. I have full videos of every lesson of Patriots History of the United States and of the World History course. And the Wild World of Politics is designed for those of you who want more political stuff. And I do political commentary 3 days a week leading up to the election next week. So we'll see where we are then. And of course, don't forget, we will be doing a live election night webcast starting at 6 o'clock Eastern time at Decision USA. Online.com. That's decisionusaonline.com. We've got full access to decision desk data, and my stats guy, Seth Keschel, will be analyzing that while I keep you entertained.
And Larry, I want to give a shout out to General Flynn. You've got a bunch of high dollar folks online.
Yeah, we have General Flynn. We have Gary Lake committed to coming on. Novelist Brian Freeman, who has taken over the Jason Bourne series. We got Seb Gorka. Actually, one of the problems we're running into, I'm getting some emails on this, is it takes a little bit longer to set everybody up for the Zoom in spot. And we're having to allow more time between people. And given the actual focus of the night, which is analyzing election data and so forth, we're having to postpone or move around or cancel some people because we just don't have enough time to get everybody in.
Well, you've got 3 weeks till the election results come in.
Yeah,
just kidding.
It's done on election night. I confess that the night is over and that the races are called, no matter what the mains want to say.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of signs of growing recognition of that among Democrats and among commentators who are, Democrats themselves, pretty much at this point, at least admitting that their candidate is struggling and playing defense and not doing well, if not outright saying it's over. Mark Halperin, lifelong Democrat, last Friday on his podcast, actually worked the word landslide into his commentary, which shocked me, frankly. I wouldn't have expected, he didn't predict a landslide, but just the fact that he held that out as a possibility was really shocking to me. So anyway, before we get into, talking about the events of the past week and what we can expect, give everybody, Larry, an update on what you're seeing in the early voting data, which, apparently everywhere is very positive for Trump and the Republicans.
Okay, so as a review, what you can do is base some assumptions on the fact that someone who is registered as a Republican will vote as a Republican. Somebody who's registered as a Democrat will vote as a Democrat, and we don't know what the indies will do. There you have to go to polls, and most polls have Trump winning a higher percentage of indies than Harris does. So let's start with my state of Arizona. Yesterday it came in with a Republican advantage of 87,511. That's a shocking advantage to have before the election even starts. Over 1 million people have voted already. And so again, you can do some back of the envelope mathematics here and assume that Trump wins 54% of independents, okay, an additional 4%. And you say that Trump wins an additional 4 or 5% of Democrats voting for Trump over Republicans voting for Harris. So he gains some there. So I calculate that right now, probably Trump has a lead of 120,000 here in Arizona, which is not quite yet insurmountable, but it's getting very, very close.
Yeah.
2 or 3 more days of this, and you can add all the Indies and the Democrats together, and it won't matter. Nevada, astonishing what's happening in Nevada. Yesterday, the Republicans won the combination vote again, early in mail-in by just under 1,000 votes. So they're now at over 32,000, almost 33,000 net over Democrats in early voting. Now, in 2020, that number was reversed. Democrats are up by almost 40,000 in 2020. So that's a flip of 71,000. Again, not even counting the Indies or the Democrats who vote Trump. And John Ralston, who's the data guru up there in Nevada, a Democrat, he's wailing and moaning, and you can pretty well tell from his reaction that he thinks it's over in Nevada. In Wisconsin, we don't have voter registration by party. So you have to use different metrics up there. And that metric would be, what are the counties that are traditionally very red or very Trumpy versus the counties that are blue? How are those doing? And the counties that are red are off the charts. Some of them, it's not even election day yet, right? And some have already voted 87% of all their Republicans.
Holy cow.
Wow.
So it's just the turnout there is not what we saw in 22 with that judge who lost a narrow race for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, where the rurals did not turn out for him. The rurals are definitely turning out for Trump. And there's a little bit of increase in Milwaukee and some of the blue counties, like 10, 15%, but nothing like what the Reds are seeing. So I think Wisconsin's safe. Michigan, the hardest of all these to judge, because A, the level of fraud in Wayne County is always pretty high, no matter who's running. And B, they don't register by party. But what we have had are a series, 3 or 4 of these Muslim leaders, whether they are mayors, whether they are imams, whatever, just general community leaders, all coming out and endorsing Trump. And so you have to figure, if Trump gets the Muslim vote of Dearborn and some of these other places, that will almost offset any gain the Democrats had out of Wayne County. And then the rest of Michigan is redder than Kamala Harris's Little Red Mao book. So it's a pretty good bet that Trump's going to win Michigan. The last 3 local polls there have had him up 1 and 2 points respectively, and RCP has him up 1 there.
Hey, before
Pennsylvania,
you go on, let's address something here. The NSA Messy Time says keeps closing. The NSA keeps closing the connection on YouTube. I have to refresh every 30 seconds. If you're having an issue with that on YouTube, you can also access this podcast on my LinkedIn account, David Blackmon at LinkedIn, and on Stu's and my X account. So just switch over if you have that issue. Anyway, go ahead, Larry.
dirty tricks from the establishment. So Pennsylvania, remember, Democrats have always had a massive, massive early vote lead in Pennsylvania. I think it was 600,000 or so in 2020. And thanks to Scott Pressler and the voter registration drives of Pennsylvania Chase, currently the Republicans are only at a deficit of about 150,000, maybe even less. And every day they pick up more ground. Folks, if this goes into Election Day with Democrats only leading early voting by 150,000, Trump will win that state by 2 to 3 points. I mean, it's that's just the nature of Pennsylvania. North Carolina, we do have registration by party there, and Republicans actually, for the first time ever, pulled ahead of Democrats in early voting in North Carolina. So I think that's done and dusted, as they say. The western areas that everybody was wringing their hands about and fretting, oh, they will never get to the polls. Well, the redneck rodeos out there have gotten their ATVs out and brought all sorts of people to the polls, and the western areas are voting very, very strong.
Nice.
Florida, not in play, but it is a nice harbinger here. Florida is already Republican plus 11%. 11. That means Trump's probably in the neighborhood of at least 10, maybe 15% in Florida. And I'm watching closely, as we will on election night, Duval County. Duval County tracks very, very closely with Georgia. And right now, the Republicans are up about 2 points in Duval County. I think it'll probably end up around 5, as I think that's where Georgia is going to be as well. And then lastly, Texas is always a hand wringer for Republicans, again, because you don't register by party. I wish you guys had fixed that. Wish somebody would introduce an issue or a proposition or whatever the hell you have there to say all registrations must be done by party, so we can put the beta male O'Rourke and the all red kinds of idiot hopium stories to rest. No, they are not going to win. Allred's not going to win the Senate seat. Maybe closer than Trump. It might be 3 points.
It
might
will
be 4.
closer than Trump, yeah.
But Trump's going to win the state by 8 to 10. And Cruz is going to go on to be reelected as a senator. So across the board, and here was a shocker that came out yesterday. A poll came out yesterday showing New Jersey early voting. Republicans were within 1.5 point of Democrats in New Jersey.
Wow. New Jersey.
Just unheard of, you know. And so you saw that rally yesterday at Madison Square Garden, which I'm sure had a lot of Jerseyites too.
Sure.
And it was just off the charts.
Look at that. I'll tell you what.
2,000 people inside and probably more than that outside who couldn't get in because of face limitation.
And they're saying there were 40 to 50,000 outside.
Yeah.
Larry,
Yeah,
I
it-
watched
it's
that
just
last
amazing.
night. I watched that last night, and wow.
Yeah, it was an amazing program. RFK Jr., Tucker Carlson, Ramaswamy, Tulsi Gabbard,
Elon.
Trump,
And the
Elon,
first lady,
everybody.
don't forget the first
The
lady.
first lady gave a
She
really
was
wonderful.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a clip of Tucker Carlson, right? Stu, a couple of minutes.
Yes, sir.
2-minute clip.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and play that.
I wish he wouldn't laugh like
Thank you.
that.
I saw the Grateful Dead in this arena in 1987. I was seated right there.
That's
How
strike
weird.
one.
It's such an honor to be here, and it's wild. Just another day following Bobby Kennedy Jr. at a Donald Trump rally in Madison Square Garden. I mean, what?
Don't do that, Tucker.
That's totally normal. Liz Cheney's out there with Kamala Harris. And there's Bobby Kennedy calling to protect women's sports at a Trump rally. It's a realignment. It's unbelievable. And the fact that it's here is even sweeter. Imagine if you're, and just pause for one moment. Imagine you're Donald Trump. You're from New York City. You become famous in New York City. You make your fortune in New York City. And all of a sudden, the leadership of New York City decides they're going to destroy you because they don't like your politics. And so yeah, boo. Imagine if that were you, though. And they try and take everything that you have. They try and put you in prison. They try and put your children in prison. If that happened to you, how often do you think you'd be going back to New York City? How about never? And yet he's here. It's like getting thrown out of a bar. And you think to yourself, well, you know, all my friends are in the bar. And you approach the door and there's the bouncer like, you're not allowed in here. But from behind the bouncer, you hear the cheers of your friend, come on in! And the bouncer hangs his head in shame. He's embarrassed that he's working for the man trying to keep the most popular person out of the bar. And that's Donald Trump back in the city that produced him with no embarrassment at all, in a room full of his friends. The stones that takes, the bravery that takes, is incredible. Donald Trump's gonna win. He's gonna win. I know that that's true. Why is Donald Trump gonna win? The people he's about to defeat have no idea. And they're panicked. They have no idea why people like Donald Trump. And their first theory was, well, Donald Trump is evil, so half the country's evil also. And that's one of the reasons they spent the last 4 years trying to destroy the country, because they're mad at its voters for liking Donald Trump.
Yep. Now,
Yeah.
Larry, I do have a video of what is happening over at the Kamala headquarters right now.
I can't wait for this one.
Yeah.
Hang on. This is the Kamala headquarters secret camera. Oh. Okay.
I
So
shouldn't
that-
laugh, having just fallen off a stair last week. I'm still recovering
Oh
from
my
that.
God. Well, and of course that video, the combination of those two videos brings us to the topic of Kamala Harris's closing argument with the support of the media, of course, that Donald Trump is Hitler. That's the entirety of their closing argument in this campaign. Do you think that's having any impact at all in Harris's favor?
I don't think anything Harris does is having any impact. She could bring up Bozo the talking horse, and it wouldn't move any voters. She brings up Beyonce and pays her apparently $10 million to say 3 sentences and leaves without performing. And of course, that only made people more angry. She brings out geriatric Bruce Springsteen, who hasn't had a hit since I was in graduate school. And
he sounded terrible too, didn't he? My God,
he sounded terrible when he was good.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't, it's their whole thing is just absurd. And I think to the extent there were any undecided people, I think they're completely flipping to Trump, saying, I may not like him, but boy, these other people are just evil and incompetent at the same time.
Yeah. David and Larry, I think that this one Chinese lady standing in line sums it up just about as hilarious. This is unbelievable. Here is a Chinese immigrant articulating it like we've never heard before, and pretty good. Listen to this, Larry.
We love Trump from our bottom of the heart, because we know Trump is the only one can save America. Kamala is so stupid. She is so low IQ, no qualification to be the president. You shall stay away from that position. You already lost the position. You lost our trust. You lost our vote. You just need to go home, to stay home. You cannot do anything to save America. You are so stupid. You don't know anything. You cannot even answer any question from the camera, from all the media. How you can be on the stage to fight for America, to protect American people, to protect all the world. You are not qualified. You just need to go home. Let Trump to save America, to save the world, to put America first. If America to be strong, to be saved, and then America can save the whole world. Trump, we love you. We love you forever. Never ever surrender. Fight, fight, fight. Fight for Trump.
Okay.
Fight.
Okay.
She made my weekend when I saw that. I swear she articulated that. And I want to say this one thing, Larry and David. I love legal immigration, and she is exactly what we want immigrating into the United States.
Legal immigrants always make the best Americans because they have such an appreciation, having gone through the process they had to go through. They have such an appreciation and understanding of what this country is and why they want to be here. And she's the personification of that, in my view.
I kept waiting for John Panette, though, to walk out and for her to go, "You'll go now."
You'll go now. Anyway, that was terrific. I just think that rally and the fit the media threw about it, it was so repugnant watching the media portray this as some sort of replay of the 1939 American Bund rally that was held there at the same venue. And I went back and did a little research, and here's a list of presidents who have done exactly the same thing during their election campaigns. You start with Franklin Roosevelt in the same venue. You go to Lyndon Johnson, John F. Kennedy. I couldn't find a rally by Jimmy Carter in Madison Square Garden. Bill Clinton was there. Barack Hussein Obama was there. So were those all recreations of the American Boone rally of 1939? No, of course not. And there were no, it's such an absurd thing that they're continuing to do this. It's the same thing they've been doing for 9 years. And to think that's an effective closing argument is just kind of bizarre to me.
I think our side needs to just ditch that stuff and not even cover these people with their Hitler argument. As soon as the word Hitler comes up, it ought to be, no, we're not going to retweet that. We're not going to put it out on social media. We're not going to cover it because it clearly shows you're a moron. A moron, if you say that, right? Get it?
Not a
moron. 2 syllables, stupid, i.e. synonym Harris. Okay.
Yeah,
not a
moron. Point. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Stu.
Not a Mormon, moron.
No.
Yeah.
Remember Bob Newhart when his neighbor Howard Borden said, "My brother is coming into town," and Bob says, "Well, where's he from?" He goes, "He's from Utah." And Bob Newhart deadpan goes, "A Mormon Borden?" He goes, "What does he do?" And he goes, "He's a doorman." So Norman Borden, the Mormon doorman.
Rest in peace, Bob Newhart, by the
really
way. Funny
what
man.
a talent.
Funny man.
So we need to look here at some things that are happening under the surface that aren't getting much attention. And one of those things, there are 2 real big ones. First of all, quietly about a month ago, the CIA, which was not briefing Trump on its daily security briefings, tried to brief him. He said, "No, I don't want your damn briefings because you're going to lie to me. And then you're going to leak something and make it look like I leaked. I'm not going to take your briefings."
They did in 2016. That's exactly what
that
they
was
did.
Absolutely brilliant. The second thing that has happened here, and by the way, last week when the CIA leaked those Israeli strike plans, they would have blamed that on Trump if they'd had the ability. But they couldn't do it last week. I think that was one of the October surprises. The other thing that's happening is Trump has quietly announced, or rather Bobby announced for Trump, that they have a transition team already in place that is privately funded, has nothing to do with the government. They're not talking to Biden or any of his minions up there. And this is also quite brilliant because I think they are cutting out the Republican National Committee, which is great. We don't need any more Reince Priebuses, rinse and repeat. We don't need any more of those people.
Right.
And keep
and
it.
That's not a shot at Michael Watley, who's done a fantastic.
He's doing a great job. And what's interesting
there's a lot of
is that now
people. Yeah, he is, but there's still a lot of those other people engaged in the RNC.
And lots of lawyers too. Lots of lawyers from the old guard. It's kind of interesting that it appears that what has happened as the campaign has moved on is that Susie Wiles took care of wrapping up all the primaries and of putting Trump in position, training him how to do his talks without any diversions or whatnot, really keeping him on message. Then Laura Trump kind of stepped in with the voter chase, the voter registration effort for about a month. And now it's interesting. It seems like Michael Watley is now, remember how in 2016 they had the 3-headed hydra of Bannon and Kellyanne Conway and Jared Kushner. He has that again now, kind of with Wiles and with Laura Trump and with Watley. And Watley seems to have stepped in now to take over the legal assault on these the cheat and any attempts to cheat. So it's just interesting to watch the internal dynamic of what's going on in the Trump campaign, which has been incredibly successful so far.
So this private effort, privately funded transition effort, is what really was the basis. People may remember Jamie Raskin made some public comments last week, the idiot congressman from Maryland, complaining about Trump's campaign having not executed these agreements you have to enter into with the deep state for them to fund your transition team. And of course, Raskin is the same guy who's been promising for months now to work to ensure there is no peaceful transition of power if Trump wins this election. So, I mean, that's all intertwined with each other, folks. Anytime you hear Jamie Raskin, know that that's the guy that's organizing the insurrection that's going to happen after this election.
Right. And Trump just short-circuited that whole business. That's why he's complaining is that they have no more power. Be gone. You have no power here, said said Dorothy to the bad witch. And so across the board here, this is a Napoleonic level campaign. And what I like to take from history and what I get so sick of hearing Republicans do is hand wring with the whatabouts. Our biggest enemy are the McClellans and the whatabouts. And well, what about this? What's Trump going to do if they say this? What if they do? We don't care. Napoleon did not care what the Austrians were going to do because he knew what he was going to do. And if he did what he was going to do, they didn't have a chance to do what they were going to do. Right. So that needs to be our mindset going into this last week is, bayonets. We're going to put in the reserves and overwhelm them and just break the center and just keep on marching. Don't look back. Don't worry about the whatabouts. And, especially in Texas, I get so many of you Texans are just, what's going to happen with Cruz? I just want to snap out of it,
I keep telling people Cruz is going to win. Do you know they had $140 million of out-of-state money come into that all-red campaign.
Good.
That guy has been up in every major TV market in this state since May.
It is pathetic.
It's unbelievable.
And I see that as just a total win, more of a total win. It's like what they did with Beta Male O'Rourke. They just created a giant funnel and poured money into this funnel. It ended up in an incinerator. And the more Democrat money we can burn up, the better. At some point, maybe somebody over there will get smart and go, you know what? I'm not pouring any money into somebody as stupid as this idiot Alred.
So one thing I think Trump has figured out, the Trump campaign, another thing that the Trump campaign has figured out that the Democrats haven't realized yet is that television advertising, and I'm going to relate this to the Rogan podcast, television advertising is a dying means of campaigning, and podcasts like Joe Rogan's and social media is the rising means of campaign communications and campaign.
And mine.
And that Rogan podcast, 3 hours, Donald Trump, a major candidate of one of the two parties, spending 3 hours in a wide-ranging discussion that covered literally every major issue facing this country. And that podcast is going to get well over 100 million listens and views. And it was free. It didn't cost Donald Trump a penny. And meanwhile, Kamala's spending $1 billion on all this TV advertising. And guys like Allred are spending 100 million on all this TV advertising that people simply fast forward through or change the channel because they don't want to listen to that crap anymore.
Well, and it's like one of those desserts. You eat certain desserts and oh, that first bite is so good. Oh my gosh, that's excellent. Second bite's kind of like, okay. And then by the time you get to the third one, I'm going to be sick. I'm going to puke if I keep eating this stuff, right? And it's like that with these commercials, is that they may have been effective once a night, or because it's different. Your eyes pick up, your ears pick up, but as soon as you start hearing somebody just saying, "You hear what?" But as soon as they start hearing these things over and over again, they absolutely turn them out. And it not only diminishes the value of the subsequent ads, but it starts to diminish the impact of the first ad.
Yeah.
Do you think Messy Times has a question, David? Do you think the Dems will be in?
Go ahead.
Do you think the Dems will be insane enough to try to sentence Trump to prison for the made-up felonies for bookkeeping issues?
Well, Robert Barnes had an opinion on that over the weekend. on a podcast he does with Rich Barris. Barris asked him that, and no, I'm sorry, it was on America's Untold Stories. He was asked that, and he said, "No, I think the judge will grant a mistrial," and I hope he's right about that. I know that the Democrats are going to go round and round on that question between now and November 26th. I hope Robert Barnes is right about that.
There's a number of things that could happen. I mean, he could in fact give him a sentence that would likely be suspended upon appeal. That's what I think he will do. But we've already heard that the appellate court is negative, that their questions were highly negative toward this case. And in other words, the likelihood is an appellate court is not going to be friendly to keeping this case open at all. So you got to judge, does he want to say, how bad does he want to save face in this case? Does he want to just have the sentence and have it suspended on appeal, and the appeal will come down sometime next year when it doesn't matter? But I think if he tries any kind of immediate enforcement of some sort of sentence that would involve jail, it would be rushed up to the Supreme Court so fast it would make your head spin, because that's clear election interference, number one. Number two, you can't sentence somebody who is going to be president, who at that point is supposed to start receiving classified briefings. As Raskin would say, they're supposed to start cooperating. You can't do it. You can't do both. So once again, that shows how incompetent these people are. They've shot themselves in the foot because now they have things going forward that are contradictory.
Yeah, and that whole lawfare effort has been a major failure on their part. That was all coordinated out of the White House and the Justice Department, all these different cases. And, there's so many ways to delay and fight back on these things. And they didn't, I think, anticipate the quality of the lawyers, the legal representation that Trump would hire. And I think his lawyers have served him very well through all of that. And it's one of the most, I just got to say, I think it's one of the most repugnant episodes in our country's history, that we had a sitting president and his mob weaponizing the legal process like that, just like you would have done in the Soviet Union. And if there's no punishment for doing that, then it will be damaging to our country.
I never would have thought that our DOJ would be suing states to keep dead people and illegals to the right to vote. Never thought I'd see it.
Well, this kind of brings us to that Fifth Circuit case that I've heard so much about. And this is the case that involves Mississippi, Texas, Louisiana. Is Arkansas on the circuit? I don't think so.
I think Oklahoma may be.
Okay. So in essence, they said, the Fifth Circuit said that all votes must be counted by midnight, that you can accept no more votes after midnight. And so that precludes any kind of, postal service activities in the middle of the night from foreign states. The problem from our side is that it only applies to those states, and that, say, the Third Circuit could, in a similar case, rule exactly the opposite. And so traditionally what would happen would be the side wanting to impose their will on the country would appeal that, find a way to appeal it. Well, this precedent says this and this precedent says that. What are we supposed to do? And it would go up to the Supreme Court. Zen Master assures me, my anonymous court expert, that the soups want nothing whatsoever to do with elections. They don't want to get in that position, and so they would simply decline to hear any such appeal. You guys have it good, but other parts of the country that need that perhaps more than you do, such as whatever circuit Pennsylvania's in, Michigan,
Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia. They're not going to have that, and the law won't apply. The ruling won't apply to them.
Well, and that's a shame, but I think you're absolutely right. And frankly, I think it's appropriate that the Supreme Court doesn't want to get in to these election issues, right? I mean, it's not really supposed to be their role unless there's no other choice. So I don't have a problem with them not wanting to get involved in a case like that.
Well, if you go back to Bush v. Gore, the whole reason the Supreme Court got involved in that was the question of constitutional timing. It had to do with the constitutional clock that was ticking down that said that the electors had to be sent to the Librarian of Congress, the circuit court in DC, and the federal court in whatever area that state is in. So the federal court there in Florida. And they had a certain date, I think it was December 12th back in 2020, that they had to get those electors in. And so once again, it's Al Gore, who was the antithesis of Bill Clinton, who had a smooth running political machine and a war room, knew how to counter everything. Al Gore was once again kind of a boob. And he tried appealing 3 counties in Florida, saying that those were miscounted and they needed to be recounted. And the Georgia Democrat courts allowed him to do that, when in fact he wasted valuable time. If he had gone straight to we need a total recount of all Florida, which probably would have worked out in Bush's advantage. If he'd gone straight to the Supreme Court with that, they would have had time to recount all of Florida. But by the time he got to the Supreme Court, after appeals through the rest of the system, it was too late. And the Supreme Court said, no, there's no time to count these ballots. They didn't rule on the ballots themselves, like the butterfly ballot. They didn't rule on that. They ruled on the constitutional issue of, is there enough time to do this?
Well, Larry and David, let me ask this. There's a question that I've been seeing flying around X a lot on, and that is, will Cackling Kamala, whatever you want to call her, will she certify the election?
She has no choice. And this is another place that the Democrats stepped on their own appendages, shall we say, after 2020, is they put in all sorts of new laws drastically limiting the role of the vice president in a challenge. So now all she can do is just certify the vote. She has no choice.
Yep.
I like it, but will she is the question.
Well, I mean, she doesn't have a choice. Again, it's not her discretion anymore. Pence had some discretion 4 years ago, but the law that Congress put into effect, and the president of the United States, or at least the sock puppet pretending to be the president of the United States, signed it. And so the law is she has to certify it. If the House votes to certify it, she has to approve it.
Here's the whole interesting thing of the Pence business. Wow. All Pence had to do was follow the Constitution and to accept a challenge from one senator and one Republican, at which point he should have adjourned the joint session, sent each session back to their own house to deliberate. Now, the Democrats in the House would have deliberated for 5 minutes, all it took to get the last member in, take the count, and go back out. The Republicans, the question was, would the Republicans have actually listened to or permitted the introduction of evidence of fraud in their hearing? And my thought is they would have made a kind of facade of listening to this, that they would have pretended to hold a real serious look at the fraud, and then they would have voted with all the rhinos in there, no fraud, and sent it back out. Now, when you think of what that would have done, number one, Mike Pence would have been something of a hero on the right. Number two, it would have defused a lot of the anger at the Steele and put it on the backs of the rhinos. And the Democrats would have been so much smarter to have allowed that. It's insane how stupid these people have become since Obama. Obama's team was pretty bright. They knew how to massage the public. They knew how to hit things. They knew how to control things. And since then, the Democrat teams, whether it was Hillary or Rutabaga or anybody else, these people, did I say this before? They are morons. They are just stupid. And everything they are trying is just, it reminds me of the Dallas Cowboys. I got to tell you.
Oh my God.
Ooh,
Don't get me
that was
started.
painful, wasn't it? Now you're bringing up some painful memories of yesterday. Holy smokes.
To be a
So
Cowboys
speaking of-
fan, you got to take a morphine injection before
Yeah,
you go to the
It's
AT&T.
bad, man. I went to bed at halftime. I knew at halftime, and they were ahead. I knew at halftime because of the way
Yeah.
that running back went crazy in the last 2 minutes of the half that the Cowboys
Yep.
were going to blow that game.
Yep.
I knew it. So I
Larry
went to bed.
Larry and David, the only thing that I could say about my football teams, Oklahoma State stinks, OU
Boy.
stinks, Texas is doing good. But I'll tell you what, Kansas City, I've been a Kansas City Chiefs fan for a very, very long time. And I am
But
so
Stu,
glad
you've got
that
the wrong-
Taylor Swift.
You got
Taylor
the wrong
Swift-
name. They renamed the team. It's the Kansas City Swifts.
But she didn't show up yesterday, and I loved
Really?
it. I did not
Wow.
have to watch a single Swiftie moment.
Yeah,
Well, I got to
that's
hand it to them.
unbelievable.
And, you know, woe to all those people who for years were saying Andy Reid isn't a good coach. You know,
Oh,
I mean, how
fantastic.
stupid do they look?
Of course, it helps to have Pat Mahomes, but
It
still,
does.
he's a hell of a coach. I mean, he even at Philadelphia, we knew he was a hell of a coach.
But the
We were
Chiefs
glad
have
when-
only 3 superstars. They've got Mahomes, they've got Kelsey, and they've got the defensive end. I forget his name. Those are their 3 superstars. Usually, you look at the Steelers in the 70s, they were loaded. They had an all-pro at every single position, right?
Yeah.
The Chiefs don't. And a lot of that has to go to good old Andy Reid. Now, I have a solution for the Cowboys. They're not going to like it. But the solution is the David Justice solution, which is when the Yankees wanted out of the gigantic David Justice contract, they traded him and they agreed to pay half his contract. If Jerry wants to fix this, I don't think he does, but if he wants to fix it, the first step would come by trading Dak and agreeing to pay half his contract to whoever takes him off your hands.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake. And I said it at the time. It was a huge mistake to re-sign him. But anyway, you've mortgaged the whole franchise for a long time. But back to the Democrats of being stupid. So I think the prime example we have is the fact that they booted Biden off the ticket when they did and replaced him not with one of the governors who wanted it, but with Kamala Harris. So I looked out at Polymarket this morning. I'm going to give you exactly the right example on this. The odds for Trump right now, Polymarket, he's sitting at 66.1% to 33.9%. On the day they booted Biden off the ticket, Trump was at 65.5% to 34.5%. Okay. She's doing worse than Biden. She's changed nothing. They're back to square one with 8 days to go before Election Day, and 40% of the votes nationally already haven't been cast. It's unbelievable.
Well, Barnes and Barris have been over the data ad nauseum and shown how Biden at least appealed to certain groups in the upper Midwest where Cackles has no appeal whatsoever, and that they were going to lose any chance, which he didn't have much of a chance back then, but they were going to lose any chance they had by alienating those voters. Barnes's discussion last week of the markets is interesting. And of course, he's a veteran gambler. He doesn't think he's a gambler. He's a wagerer because he believes that if you gather enough information, it's not really a bet. But his analysis was that what's happened is that by opening up these markets to ordinary people, that you're starting to get a Trump effect in the markets, which is that ordinary people are having an effect on the voting and on the wagering, and they can't rig it the way they could say in 2016. My concern with markets as a predictor of political events is that ultimately, and even Barnes has admitted this, ultimately at some point it's about making money. It's not about advancing an agenda or an idea, right? And he pointed out that, and I would always say, if you believe in Polymarket and those kinds of things, how'd you do on around midnight in 2020 when Trump was a 99% favorite to win, right? And Barnes said, well, I got out. His answer was that he was smart enough to get out at that time because he wanted to take his money and run. But again, that dodges the question of, well, are they really that predictive? Can other things happen that can really
Oh, sure they
shock
can.
these markets?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think they're probably as predictive as the public opinion polls, which is often they're wrong and often
Yes.
they're right. I think the thing to say about the question of whether they should have replaced Biden with Harris is that Harris has changed nothing. She's behind in the polls, just like Biden was. She's behind the betting markets, just like Biden was. Nate Silver's index. Nate Silver's predicting her to lose, just like he was predicting Biden would lose. It's just in every measure, they've gone back to square one with 8 days left in the race.
But you
And-
mentioned the governor, see, and here's the problem. Again, they were
Right,
so
they weren't any
stupid.
better either, probably.
But in any of the governors would have been worse from the standpoint of they wouldn't have had the money, because legally
She got
the
all
only
that.
way you could transfer all of Biden's fundraising, which at the time was something like $400 million to anybody, it only could have been Harris, because the ticket before that was Biden Harris. Biden drops out, Harris is still legally entitled to that money, sort of like a bad divorce. But but if you were to name Newsom, he might be a little bit more popular, but he wouldn't have had all of that money. He would have had to ramp up a campaign. From when did that occur? Was it mid-July when Biden
It was
stepped?
July 20 something, 21st, I think, maybe.
Okay. So he would have had to have raised all that money in August and September, which would have really detracted from regular old campaigning. Moreover, I think a lot of these governors sensed that Trump couldn't be beaten no matter who you put in there, and that they didn't want to waste their shot now when they could, in 2028, possibly go up against who we now think will be J.D. Vance.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully. Listen, we're running short of time.
You're
This
kidding.
will be our
We just started.
I know. This will be our last episode before Election Day. And Larry, I've really enjoyed doing these with you, and Stu. And I think we should close this out by making predictions about how this election is going to go. I think we can do it in whatever format y'all choose. I'm going to focus just strictly on the presidential race and races in Texas, but y'all can do what you want to do. We'll start with Stu.
I think we're going to head around that 312 on the electoral college mark for the president and the hillbilly. I really am looking at that. And I believe, Larry, you had said that somewhere in that range on somewhere else in that range. I'm not claiming it, and I'm going to give it to you, Larry, that I think I heard it from you. If not, I'm still going to claim it.
Well, I've had Trump at 312 electoral votes since June. It hasn't moved one iota in my view. The only thing that has changed is now I think it is more likely, let's say 55%, that he would also pull in one or two of the second tier of battleground states, meaning the New Hampshire, Minnesota, Virginia, Maine, New Mexico. We had a poll out of New Mexico last week that was 3 points. That's margin of error. So I'm going to say 312, but I will not be a bit surprised if it goes up as high as 340. Republicans will net 3 seats in the Senate, West Virginia, Montana, and Ohio, but they have a very good chance of netting an additional 2 and even 3. And I think that McCormick is tied now and could win Pennsylvania. Rogers is tied, could win Michigan. Hoved is tied, could win Wisconsin. And then you've got just outside the margin of error, Carrie Lake. Given our turnout in Arizona, she has a real shot now. And Sam Brown apparently has been polling well enough that the Republican Senatorial Committee is putting a bunch of money into his race. Nice. So I'm going with an R+3 Senate, but it won't surprise me if it's R+6 or even R+8. And we hold the House. Republicans hold the House.
And Republicans hold the House still at 3 seats, or do you think we may pick up?
No, I think they pick up 5 to 10. for example, we just saw something come out of Minnesota that says 6 out of the 7 contested seats there are Republicans leading. Two of the contested seats in California, Republicans leading. So again, one of the reasons Trump did the rally in Madison Square Garden was to help House candidates in New York and New Jersey get over the edge. So I think that you'll probably see Republicans in the neighborhood of 225 to 235 in the House.
Wow. Do you think he gets the popular vote?
Yes, by 1.5 points. Barnes says 3, Barris says 1, so I'm going to split it.
Well, I hope he does do that. It would be really unifying for the country if he was able to win the popular vote as well as the Electoral College. I think he'll certainly win the Electoral College. I'm not going to try to guess the number of votes, but he'll win, and it'll be pretty solid. In Texas, Ted Cruz is going to win by 6 to 8% of the vote, and people need to stop worrying about that. Trump will have a double-digit win here in Texas. It won't be close. It won't be close in Florida either. You know, I think obviously that the Republicans will have a majority in the Senate. I think, like Larry does, I think it's probably going to be at the lower end of the range, probably 52 or 53 seats. And in the House, it's going to be a narrow majority as well. Unless, and here's the one thing, if the people who haven't voted and are still semi-undecided break hard for Trump in these battleground states, you could see a pretty significant majority in the House and a pretty significant popular vote win for Trump. And I think that when you look at the early voting combined with the polling in California and New York, which is still one-sided, but 15 to 25 points closer than it was in 2020 heading into Election Day, you have the possibility for a pretty significant, maybe 52 or 53% Trump win in the popular vote if those polls are accurate. So, you know, this could be a pretty big election day, and we could all have an early night, election night. And that's what I'm really hoping for.
Let's not let Brett Baird call it, though.
Yeah, watch Decision USA online. Yeah, watch us. I will call it if I am convinced that Trump has won a state. And I'm talking to various people, and you know, Barris and other people say no, all the votes that are outstanding are still red votes, and there's no more that they can get. We won't hesitate to call it, but we didn't make any early calls in 2020, and I don't think we'll make any false calls in 24. I did promise my colleague Seth Keshel that he got to call that President Trump has won the election. He'll be the one to call that.
Well, I hope he gets to do it. I think he will.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been very enjoyable. Really appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who has watched and listened to these. Everybody get out and vote. Do it this week. Bank your vote as early as you can and get it done.
Vote early.
Don't risk having something come up and preventing you from being to get out on election day.
Yeah.
With that, I think we're done, boys and girls.
Bye, guys.
Y'all have a great week.
Bye-bye.